Bend Around the Wind by Skylia. Chapter 24. Subconsciously. The first thing Loki became aware of was the dull, deep ache in his head. He recognized the pain, even if he did not feel it in centuries, this bone-deep exhaustion in every part of his body. He knew that he needed more rest, even before he tried to figure out what happened. He became aware that he was lying on something soft, a bed, with his head resting on something firmer, warmer. It smelled familiar, even if he could not put his finger on it. Something that moved slowly. Wait. He tried to move and open his eyes, but it took him a moment to gather his strength to do it. A small groan escaped his lips without his consent when he finally moved to get up, because the pain in his muscles was anything but pleasant. "Hey! You okay?" He heard and felt an arm steady him by the shoulders. When his vision cleared out, he saw Stark. Loki frowned and looked around. The blanket that had just slid down from him, the bed, Stark. It did not make much sense. "What are you doing in my bed?" he asked. "Well, technically it's Stuyu's bed," Stark answered. Loki's mind was too foggy and slow to answer that, so he just scowled some more. Stark looked at him for a moment before he probably realized that Loki's question was indeed not rhetorical. "You used magic, remember?" "I know I used magic. I know what overstrain feels like," Loki grumbled. "Yeah, well, then you passed out too," Stark added helpfully. Loki groaned in annoyance, so he fainted like some wilting flower. "Excellent." "I really hate you right now," he said and let himself flop back to the bed. Stark's presence be damned, he was exhausted. "I know you do, sorry," Stark said. "You want me to make you a horny helmet?" Loki snorted. "There's only so many times you can bribe me with gifts." "Don't underestimate my bribing abilities. I had a lot of practice." "Oh, just shut up! Your voice is making my headache worse," Loki told him and buried his head further into the bed. "I didn't think this could happen," Stark said, a bit more seriously. "You always hit the Drake with no problem." "It's harder to fool machines than sentient beings. And I told you using magic without an outside source would tire me out," Loki grumbled, voice half muffled from the bed. "Yeah, but you forgot to mention that it includes nosebleed and cold fever and whatever." "You're not stupid, Stark. I was not wary of using magic because it would simply make me sleepy." "Yeah, I did not really think too much about it," Stark admitted. Loki did not feel like moving. He hated this. He never wanted to get himself in such a state. It was all Stark's fault. No, it was his own fault for going along with this madness. Time was essential at that moment, and he knew Stark was too stubborn to listen, so he did what he had to do. By the Norns, he knew this would cause them trouble. He knew it, and he was right. He should have said no, but he also did not want more strangers on the ship. Who knew what they would have done to them just for finding the scrolls there, or after they took a closer look at the cargo, or after they asked some more questions? He really did not have a choice, and it was Stark who made it so. He was too tired to be as angry as he should have been. "You did not answer my question," Loki told him. "Which one?" "What are you doing in the same bed as me?" Loki managed to sit up again to look at the human. Stark was looking back at him, his eyes confused and searching for a moment. Then he smiled. It was a strange sort of smile that made Loki frown again. "I guess at the end you were too out of it to remember," he said. "Remember what?" Loki asked, but Stark just looked at him for another moment. His smile even widened some more. What did Valhalla at Stark to smile about like that? "You were in a bad shape," Stark started. "You really should have given me a warning. I had no idea what to do." "Oh, please!" Loki rolled his eyes. "Gods, even his eyeballs hurt. It's not like my life was at risk." "Not with this spell. With other magic, it may have been, but he did not have the energy to get into yet another lecture about magic with Stark." "Well, I did not know that," Stark said. "It looks like it. You were bleeding, your eyes cold, sweating, shaking. How was I supposed to know whether it was life-threatening or not? It looked bad." "Your concern is unnecessary," Loki told him with an unimpressed look. "As you can see, I am well." "Yeah, you look like death warmed over. Well is not the word I'd use," Stark replied. "I was not in danger," Loki said again. "It's just pain." "That's bad enough." "You still did not answer my question." Loki said. Stark's proximity did not irritate him per se, but he was not fond of prolonged unnecessary contact, and since just a moment ago he was sleeping on... By the Norns, he did not just sleep right on top of him, did he? He took in his position and where Stark was sitting, and yes, it looked like he did indeed. He did not know whether to be mortified or angry. What was Stark doing here anyway? The human must have noticed something about his expression because that strange smile returned to his face. You were unconscious, he said, and you looked horrible. Near death, sort of horrible. I didn't feel like leaving you alone. He shrugged. There was something strange in his tone, so Loki narrowed his eyes. Well, you can leave now, he said firmly. Well, this is still Juyu's bed, so how about you eat, drink, and then we get you to your own bed. I am perfectly capable. Just eat, Stark said, gesturing towards the other side of the bed before he stood up to stretch his muscles. Loki turned and noticed the food. He was indeed really hungry, so he let it go for now. Their journey back to their room started with Loki trying to walk on his own. It did not go well. The only reason why he did not hit the floor was that Stark was close enough to steady him in time. He was irritated when Stark had to put his arm around him to take some of his weight. Everything since he woke up was humiliating. The food helped some, but he was still in need of a lot of rest. He did not want to lie around doing nothing, but it did not seem like he had a choice. He tried to walk on his own as much as possible, only leaning on Stark when it was absolutely necessary. The human stayed quiet for a while, but then all of a sudden, he sighed loudly. You don't have to do this, you know, he said. What? This. Acting all tough. I'm not, Loki started, but Stark did not let him speak. I've seen you beat, cut up, burnt, bled out, basically in every horrible shape possible. Now, you're a little shaky, so what? It's just me. Cut it out and let me help you. Loki bit his lip to stop from answering. I know you hate being weak, the human said in a quieter tone, but it's just me. I already know what a badass you are. You really don't have to put up a front. I am not doing anything for your benefit, Loki answered. Even the idea was ridiculous. Stark sighed again. Sometimes you are so stubborn, it makes me look reasonable. Loki did not answer, but after a few steps, he let Stark take a bit more of his weight. Stark wisely kept his mouth shut about it. They walked in silence for another few moments before apparently the human got tired of the quiet and spoke again. You know why it was scary as hell? He asked. What? Watching you crumble like that. The human continued. Loki stayed silent. Because anything that can knock you off your feet like that has to be some damn scary stuff. Oh, don't be so dramatic! No, I was seriously thinking that. It's one thing to blow yourself up in a lab accident. It doesn't happen if you're not reckless. But magic doing this to you is dangerous. It's like you're playing with fire all the time, and the second you lose control, it burns you to dust. I can't even imagine. I mean, sure, it must be quite something to have all that power at your disposal, knowing that if you're not good enough, it's going to slip from your fingers and destroy you. It's power and danger, and the more I try to wrap my head around it, the more exciting it seems. Exhilarating, Stark said, turning to look at him. His eyes were a tiny bit wider than usual, his brain obviously running on full speed, thinking about it. I remember the first time I really flew with my suit. I kept going higher and higher until I almost killed myself. You must have felt alive. More than ever before that, Stark agreed. But you and magic... You know what a fire dancer is? I don't know if you have them on Asgard. They're like performers, fire breathing and spinning, and yes, we have those. It was the best example I could think of, because it's spectacular and dangerous, and one wrong move and you end up with a nasty burn or losing half your face. I am the god of fire as well, Loki told him. Really? Stark looked at him. I knew there was something with you and fire. It's like the perfect manifestation of chaos. Destruction and creation, the whole shebang. I don't even know what's up with you in green. Shouldn't you be running around in gold, orange, and red? Loki stayed silent for a moment, then simply said, It would make me look pale. Stark burst out laughing as expected. You mean paler? He snickered. But you're right, we can't have that. Style is a serious matter. Even Loki had to chuckle at that, even if his muscles hurt from it. So, is the cold thing something to worry about? Stark asked, and Loki almost stopped walking. What? You were cold when you passed out, icy cold. And you tells me you feel cold all the time. Now he really stopped walking and felt how his muscles tensed. You talked about me with them? He asked, anger rising up immediately. What? No, I just told her I did not like bees staring at you all the time, so she told me that you felt cold to them. They're reptilian, they don't like cold things, so they were kind of weirded out by it. They could sense that you had a lower body temperature than me. Loki took a breath and started walking again. Stark did not stop him, but helped him along. It does not matter, Loki grit out. I just want to know what to do, Stark said firmly. You were sweating like you had a fever, while you felt freezing cold at the touch, and I did not know what to do about it, or if I needed to do anything or not. You said you needed rest, but how am I supposed to know what's normal and what means something's wrong? You were unconscious, and I felt like an idiot for not doing anything. Loki closed his eyes for a moment, willing his mind to not think about it, not even a little bit. It's normal, he said after a moment. Both? Yes, both, Loki said sharply. Stark better drop this line of questioning. Wow, a cold fire god. He chuckled after a moment. You really are chaos incarnate through and through, aren't you? And you find that amusing, Loki said, his tone still a little sharp. Yeah, I mean, if you would feel hot to the touch, that would be like predictable, right? Something that's the way the natural order dictates it. You're like screwing up the natural order just by existing. If that's not Chaos God Supreme stuff, I don't know what is. Loki felt suddenly amused, and it chased away his anger. Glancing to the side, he noticed that Stark was also smiling. The taller Skrull, Juyu, was standing outside of their door. When Loki noticed her, he stood up a little straighter, even if it was currently hard to hide his weakened state. They had to be there when he lost consciousness. Hey, Juyu, Stark greeted her. Stark? She nodded, then looked at Loki. You look much better, she observed. Loki just stared at her, wanting her out of the way so he could rest some more. She kept her gaze on Loki for a moment, to which, in answer, Loki narrowed his eyes considerably. She looked away and let out a huff. Fine, I won't waste your time then. Thank you. That's all I wanted to say. And then she walked past them and left without another word. Stark did not comment, and Loki did not feel like saying anything either. He most definitely did not do it for the Skrulls, but to get rid of the patrol ship as quickly as possible without having to argue and deal with Stark's idiocy again. They headed inside the room. I don't think you need the tough act in front of them either, Stark said, out of all the ridiculous things to say. I disagree, Loki said. It's risky to show weakness in front of strangers. Even Stark knew that. No, believe me, they know that you're dangerous. They know it very well. A little passing out is not going to make you less scary all of a sudden. You should be proud. Big, dark, and intimidating is like your basic setting, and it is indeed scaring the crap out of people. Loki finally sat down on the bed, his muscles grateful for not having to move more. The walk tired him out a lot. He felt like he could fall asleep again right away. They cannot be trusted, Loki said. Maybe. Stark shrugged, standing before him. But Juyu told me she thinks you're dangerous, but her first reaction when you collapsed was still to catch you, so that you don't smash your pretty face in with the floor. What does that tell us? Loki wanted to roll his eyes. You're reading too much into it. It's really hard to hide or fake subconscious behavior. Stark said with a smile again. You sure know that. That was true, but Stark's example did not prove anything. Some could fake things that looked like they were subconscious, especially when they were completely in control of themselves. That was easy. The girl would have to be in distress or pain or something similar in order to believe that her reactions were true. He did not feel like arguing, though. You should sleep, Stark said, stepping back. Loki caught him by his clothes before he could leave. Wait, he said. Yep, Stark asked. Loki looked at his hand, how his fingers were clenched in Stark's shirt, and suddenly he remembered what happened before he lost consciousness. He must have been too slow in schooling his expression because Stark smiled knowingly. He finally knew what that smile was about, the infuriating little... Stark put a hand on top of his to pry it off from his shirt. I'll lock the door so that nobody can get in, he said. Just sleep. Then he put Loki's hand down and left without saying anything else, closing the door behind him. Loki expected at least some sarcastic remark about his behavior. How could he even do that? Cling to someone else like he was a scared child. He was obviously not in his right mind, on the verge of losing consciousness, but this was still ridiculous. The amount of humiliation was making his blood boil. He flopped down on the bed. Stark probably felt guilty since he was the one demanding Loki's help. That was probably why he did not bring up Loki's disgraceful behavior. He could not think of any other reason. Well, of course, Stark also knew how Loki felt about displaying weakness, but this was still not acceptable. He should be angrier. He should be a lot angrier than he was right now. He should be thinking about a way to punish Stark for allowing Loki to abase himself in such a manner. How could he even trust the man if he allowed something like this to happen? He knew Loki was not in a condition to think clearly. Stark should not have allowed it. God, he slept with his head resting on him. This was so degrading. Stark allowed it and had the gall to smile about it. Stupid, big-mouthed, infuriating human. What was he thinking? Did he really believe that Loki made No, not one bit. It was demeaning and humiliating, and never in his life would he have done something like that if he would have been in complete control of... He opened his eyes again and stared up at the ceiling for a long moment, his breath stuck in his throat. His heart was already beating heavily from anger. This little revelation did not help in slowing it down. Subconscious... Oh no. No. Damn it all. No! He groaned and closed his eyes in annoyance. This cannot be happening. It cannot. He did not... Damn. He cursed quietly. He needed sleep. He needed sleep, and he needed to forget about all of this. When he next woke up, it was to the sound of muttered words. It sounded afraid, and it took his sleep-heavy mind a few moments to recognize Stark's voice. He sat upright right away in the dimly lit room. Only the small light next to the table was turned on. They never slept in complete darkness. The sound came again, and Loki turned towards Stark's bed to see the human thrashing, his covers twisting around his legs and torso. Nightmare, he knew. They were a regular occurrence. It was shameful to admit, but for both of them. Loki had too many horrors hiding away in his mind to have restful nights, and Stark was the same. Normally, Loki left him alone, because Stark always woke rather quickly. This time, he was out of his bed before he thought twice about it. Stark's skin was burning under Loki's cool fingers when he touched his forehead. His brows were furrowed, his eyes clenched tightly shut, his whole body tense in distress. "Stark!" he called quietly, letting his hand rest on his forehead with his thumb on the frown, smoothing it out just by keeping it there. It took a little time, but eventually the human relaxed and woke up, opened his eyes tiredly. He turned and looked at Loki. His eyes were wide, his nightmare still lurking darkly behind the warm brown color. His skin was too warm and damp, his breathing too heavy. He did not say a word, but he did look surprised to see the god so close. "You're safe," Loki told him simply. Then a moment later, he stood up to walk back to his own bed, already berating himself for such a ridiculous sentimental display. Fortunately, Stark did not say anything, and Loki knew that he would not sleep again. He never went back to sleep after nightmares. He was indeed out of his bed after some time, putting on some clothes and most likely heading to his workshop. Loki listened to him leave and only opened his eyes again once the door closed and the room fell silent. "Damn!" he sighed again.